Well, it is an absolutely beautiful day, you guys, for our Wednesday walkabout. I'm back in the front yard, and sadly, the tulips are really about finished. There's just a few that are kind of hanging on. And even though I'm always so sad to see them go, I'm so happy to see other stuff starting to come out. And it has been cool and kind of drizzly, which is the perfect weather for kind of the follow-up show. That would be the Larkspur and the Foxglove and the feverfew and some of the chamomile, all of those other little pretties, ephemerals that are going to start coming into play here pretty soon. Now, another thing that makes me happy is to wake up this morning and have a message from my friend Klaus Dalby over in Scandinavia. Hello, Klaus. We're going to try to work on some projects together, you guys. We're going to try to do some live streaming where we talk back and forth to one another. I'm going to see if I can twist his arm and have him do a garden tour for us. He is just such a gentleman. We've been working on some other things together. I just can't wait to either show you his beautiful gardens or introduce you to him if you haven't already discovered him. Find him on Instagram, find him absolutely anywhere on any social platform. He is the best and such a kind man. Okay, so now it's time to think about what to do with the tulips. So I've got my wonderful, one of my QVC baskets here to catch my debris. And typically what I like to do, you guys, I do not leave them to brown and overwinter in or over season to next year. Now, why? I do that for a number of different reasons. One, they don't reliably come back, and my soul has to have tulips every single year. So I don't let them die and brown back and mature, the foliage to mature, to feed the bulbs so they will come back next year. Because tulips, unlike daffodils, unlike other bulbs, spring blooming bulbs, they just don't reliably come back for me. And I don't have really good enough drainage for them. The other thing is, as you can see from Stuart, if you'll just kind of do kind of a panoramic expanse of the garden, I've got a lot of them. And that would be a lot of brown foliage holding center stage in my garden at the most lovely time of year. And I don't want to do that. Thirdly, I just have to water too many things. I've got too many other things that are going to come afterwards that are going to require watering. And that watering also has a tendency to make the bulbs rot, any bulbs that were already in the ground. And so because of that, I just happily reorder every year from Color Blends. I also like to mix up my different palette every spring. So that gives me an opportunity to do so. So I just pull these out. I don't feel bad about it. I just relegate them to the compost pile, and they have done their service. Thank you for your service, beautiful tulip bulbs. So this was, by the way, this was Pinotage and Vidal, two different blends that I put together. I'll put links below. So you can see now that they pretty much have been spent. Now I have to show you, because I do find beauty just almost everywhere, even after something has passed its prime. But now just look, how gorgeous is just that seed head. I just love it has almost an insect-like quality to it. And sometimes, you guys, I have even been known to clip these, take off the dead foliage or dead blooms, and when they are at their best and especially plump, I'll even use them in flower arrangements because I just love the way they look. And when you put them all together in a clump, I think they're just really, really fun. And they just, like so many things, have you noticed that individually they're interesting, but when you put them together in a clump, they become really special. So sometimes I will do that. And I just think that's a fun thing to do. But I'm not going to do it today because I got too many other things going on. Isn't that pretty? Stuart's laughing at me. Isn't that pretty, just the foliage against the green. Nature is it's just wonderful. It's one of the reasons I like working out in the yard. Okay, so these I'm just going to pull out. Now, ideally, they will come out with the bulb attached if it's right after a rain and the soil is really loose and friable. But a lot of times they just come out like this, leaving the bulb in place. Now, the reason I don't like to sometimes leave the bulb in place is because then next year it will put up some half-hearted foliage that won't bloom, that isn't such a much, but that's okay. So I will do this throughout the garden. I will go through and I will remove I'll either dig up or pull out all of the bulbs. Now the pansies, because it's been so cool, they've got a lot more life in them. So I'm gonna leave those in place. Happily this year, it hasn't warmed up as fast as it normally does. It did for a period of time, but then it cooled down again. And this is the ideal kind of environment for pansies and violas, and actually for the creeping phlox. So look in here, I even have a couple of alliums. I don't even remember planting those, but they're there. So you can see those little red tufts of foliage. So many asked about the crepe myrtles. Did they make it or not? Well, most of them just died back to the root zone, and so I just cut those back in their entirety, and now they're starting to flush out, and before I know it, they will consume this whole area. Now here is another kind of happy thing, you guys. This was a surprise to me. So I had a gorgeous drift shrub rose in here. It was called Diana. It was a Maitland rose, and I cut it back really hard, and sadly, when it came back, it had, at first it didn't, but then it became evident that it had rose rosette. So I dug it out, and I did not plant another rose in its place. I have another pink Maitland rose growing in the foreground. But look what I discovered as I was cutting back and pulling out all of the dead stuff after the Arctic blast. A branch of it, a cane of it, had rooted. And look, I've got a whole nother shrub rose here with buds on it, no less, and completely devoid of any signs of rose rosette. So it will get big, and it will fill this space, and I'll kind of clear this area out so it gets good air circulation. So there are things that are coming up behind all of the tulips that are finishing off. You can see that all of those nandinas are just really doing beautifully. I also planted in the back some obsession nandinas and some other things, and they are all, I cut those back and they're all coming out just beautifully. I'm constantly still picking up twigs and branches from the storm. So as we kind of traverse this area, you can kind of see all of the boxwood have put on new fabulous growth. And I'm just going to let them do their thing for a while. I'm not going to clip them. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to let them get big and fluffy, because there were some that died. I took them out and I didn't replace them. So the existing boxwood will fill the void. And if you're wondering what my favorites are, I of course love Baby Gem from Southern Living Plant Collection, and I love Green Mountain and Winter Gem. I also love Green Beauty and Green Velvet. Those are pretty much my favorite varieties. Now, over in here, you can see there's another crepe myrtle that I'd had for years. I thought it was a goner, but it's starting to come back. And behind it, you can see there's little sweet Columbine coming up everywhere. And that ferny foliage in the foreground, that is a Minoan lace that goes to seed. It's like a Queen Anne's lace, but shorter and stubbier. It's very, very, very pretty. It was gifted to me by a friend of mine. And it is in the foreground of a whole bunch of Shasta daisies that will come back out and will fill in this area here. There's some sedum, autumn joy. Look at how the feverfew has grown. And look how it is the perfect color companion to that lemon lime nandina, which came out beautifully. I wasn't sure if it would or not, but I cut it back and it did. And I think I'm going to sprinkle some more lemon limes through here because I love the foliage. So once the tulips are gone, then I'll do a few more things. I will start chasing those cabbage butterflies because the cabbage worms that are eating up some of my cabbages, I haven't been tending to those like I should. I should have sprayed them or dusted them with BT, bacterial thuringiensis, to control them, and I didn't. But I still love the way this little wattle fencing, I'll put a link to it below, that I got from Home Depot. Now, so many of you commented on this emerald blue phlox that still looks very, very pretty in the foreground. And I love it when ground covers intermingle to form like a tapestry, a carpet tapestry. And this is the vinca minor that has gone in and intertwined and insinuated itself into that phlox. When this is all finished blooming and when it starts looking kind of ragged, I'll come in here with a weed eater. You could also do it with long bladed shears, and I will just kind of shear off the top. And also along the edges, let me kind of demonstrate here, so that along the edges it will be nice and tidy. So with the weed eater you can do this. So the edges will be as tidy as the top. And then it will continue to grow in some instances, but in a very bushy fashion. Now, one thing I always have to constantly check for, especially if it's been rainy, and I do that by lifting up the expanse of whatever it is I've got planted, this, in this case, the phlox, and I'll look underneath to see if there's any little enemies down there. Look, you can see that there is a start of a snail. I can also see some roly-polies in here. Look, here's another one. Can you see those? Little tiny, tiny. So I could come back in here with some sluggo or something organic to prevent those. And also I can use some Captain Jack's bonide dust to tackle any sow bugs, which when it's really, really wet can become a problem. And I'll put, we've got some littles going by, can really be a problem if we've got a lot of rain. So I'll put links to those below. Now look here how the foxglove is starting to come out just really beautifully. And behind it, Stuart, can you see that chamomile? And here's another self-seeder. These are all self-seeders, you guys. A beautiful purple columbine. And then before long, the golden feverfew will bloom in its very classic kind of daisy-like bloom. And one thing, it's just kind of a sequence. One thing comes after another. The other thing that is really late this year that came, it normally blooms much earlier. This year, for whatever reason, it's bloomed much better, though later. And that is all of this. And this too self-seeds, you guys. This Senecio aurea. And it makes a really wonderful ground cover. It's got leaves that are roundish and very pretty. And you can see here that it is blooming in tandem with some strawberries that I've got planted in there. And pretty soon this whole area will be filled. And my approach to ground covers, you guys, is just to let it all kind of grow together in its preferred environment. So one thing will start growing and intermingling with something else, And then when it reaches its preferred environment, it will kind of start taking over, and then something else may take over. But the result, as you can see here, is just this kind of complex textural tapestry of all sorts of different plants. And I should also point out, because I know someone will ask, that is just a beautiful emerald and gold small-leaved euonymus. And it is happy to have so much more light than it used to. Then this whole area just has a lot of stuff coming on. There's all sorts of foxglove. Here's some more foxglove. And I let it go to seed, and it sometimes comes back in a spectacular fashion and sometimes not so much. There's all sorts of columbine in here, and I love the way the columbine just kind of floats. It just kind of floats over the other things it's growing amongst. And look at how pretty it looks with that golden senecio and also with that purple ajuga down at the base. Stuart, you're doing such a good job. Look, there's some hidden in here. All of that purple is from some seed that I borrowed from a Munich beer garden years ago, before I was grown up and responsible and didn't break the law. But do I regret it? No, I do not regret it. Look in there. All of that Burford, common Burford Chinese holly, that's all starting to come back out. Look at all that pretty, fleshy, light green new growth. And there's some more of that beautiful columbine. And there now is the appearance of some fern in the distance. This borage is just gotten huge. It was one of the things that apparently liked the cold weather. I've got eruptions of hellebores absolutely everywhere, and I am digging big clumps and dividing some of it to use in the back, and I'll show you how I am doing that when I kind of restage and do a makeover of my front porch. Definitely one of the winners this year after the Arctic blast were encore azaleas. Now they may not look like much right now, but the fact that they are alive and that they are putting out such sweet new buds makes me so happy. And pretty soon they will be all flushed out and be really, really gorgeous. And some of these weren't even mature. So the fact that they're putting on new growth, you can see that one in the distance, Stuart. The fact that they're putting out new leaf buds just makes me happy. So it's kind of coming along, you guys. Stuart, if you'll show the hanging baskets by the front door. And this just goes to show that something, even as it finishes its life cycle, is just beautiful. I love those pale yellow flowers on the Latin kale when the kale went to flower, and now the bok choy is about to go to flower too. And I just leave it there. And from its distance, especially from the street, it looks so pretty, especially when the wind blows it. And lots is going on the porch. I'll save that for another day because I've probably taken up too much of your time for this walkabout. But I appreciate you doing it with me. It was fun. I so appreciate that you guys are as enthusiastic as I am about the garden and that you appreciate it so much. I love it when you make comments. I love it when you, I've often said I'm just a learn by experience kind of gardener. So when you guys share tips that I'm not familiar with, it's a wonderful collaboration that I'm having with you as followers. So you talk to me, I talk to you, we both learn from each other, and I just absolutely love that. So from a very appreciative moi to you, thank you for being my gardening pal and hanging out in the garden with me today. You guys have a great rest of the week.